The sky above Virex Prime had been clear for 10,000 years, unmarred by the fires of war that the Dominion had brought to so many other worlds. Now it burned with the light of 800 human warships, and the citizens below waited for death to fall upon them. It never came. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Remembrance and looked down at the world his fleet could destroy in hours. The planet was beautiful in its way: blue oceans, green continents, cities that sparkled like jewels in the sunlight. And within those cities, billions of Virex civilians who had never held a weapon, never ordered an attack, never chosen the war that their leaders had started. Target analysis complete. His tactical officer reported, "We have identified every military installation on the planet. Shipyards, weapons factories, training academies, command bunkers, all within our firing solutions. And civilian casualties if we proceed?" The officer hesitated. "Minimal to none, if we maintain precision targeting." "Sir, may I ask a question?" Okonkwo nodded. "We could end them. We could bomb this world until nothing remains. After what they did to New Eden, no one would blame us. Why are we holding back?" The Admiral turned from the view screen and looked at his officer with eyes that held exhaustion, grief, and something that might have been wisdom. "Because if we destroy them completely, we become what they were. Because the children down there did not kill our children. Because vengeance and justice are not the same thing, even when they feel like they should be." He turned back to the planet below. "We came here to end a threat, not to commit murder. The Dominion's military will be destroyed. Their ability to make war will be erased. But their people will survive, and they will have a chance to become something better than what they were. That is the human way: not genocide, but consequence. Not extinction, but transformation." The bombardment began at dawn, precisely targeted at military installations across the planet. Orbital defense platforms fell from the sky. Shipyards collapsed into rubble. Weapons factories became craters. The entire war machine that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years was systematically dismantled, piece by piece, without a single civilian death when it was over. The Dominion had no fleet, no army, no ability to threaten anyone ever again, but the Virex were still alive. And that made all the difference. 3 days after the bombardment ended, the first human medical ships descended through the atmosphere. They brought doctors and engineers, food and medicine, the tools to rebuild what the war had broken. Virex children who had hidden in shelters emerged to find humans offering them blankets and water. And they did not understand. One young Virex girl approached a human soldier who was distributing supplies, her scales pale with fear. "Why?" she asked through her translator. "We attacked you. We killed your people. Why are you helping us?" The soldier, a woman named Sarah Chun, whose distant cousin had died on New Eden, knelt down to meet the child's eyes. "Because you are not the people who attacked us," she said gently. "Because hurting you would not bring back the people we lost. Because we want you to grow up in a galaxy where species help each other instead of destroying each other. And because—" she paused, searching for the right words. "Because if we only know how to hurt, then we have already lost. Even if we win every battle." The child did not fully understand, but she accepted the water bottle Sarah offered. And that was a beginning. 1 year after the Battle of Virex Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez returned to the chambers of the Galactic Concord. The hall was different now, quieter, more respectful. The laughter and mockery that had once followed humans through these corridors completely silent. She walked to the central platform as she had done so many times before. But now every species rose in acknowledgement as she passed. Even Krathvalum, the warrior who had spent decades insulting her people, stood with his arms pressed against his chest in the highest HFY salute. "Distinguished members of the Concord," Elena began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. "I come before you not to celebrate victory, but to speak of peace." She let the word hang in the air. For 120 years, humanity sought peace in this galaxy. We built farms instead of fortresses, schools instead of shipyards, connections instead of weapons. We believed that if we showed the galaxy we meant no harm, the galaxy would extend us the same courtesy. Her expression hardened slightly. We were wrong. Peace is not given, it must be earned, and sometimes it must be defended. The Virex taught us that lesson when they murdered our people on New Eden. They believed that our kindness was weakness, that our restraint was cowardice, that our love of peace meant we had forgotten how to fight. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from every species. Let this war be a lesson written in stars. Humanity does not start wars. We lack the taste for conquest, the hunger for glory, the need to dominate others. We want nothing more than to live in peace alongside our neighbors. But if war is brought to us, if our homes are attacked, our children killed, our people slaughtered, we will end it. Completely, permanently, and without mercy for those who showed none to us. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer. But we will not become monsters in the process. We will not commit genocide or enslave our enemies. We will break their ability to harm us, and then we will help them rebuild as something better. That is the human way, terrible in war, generous in peace. We are not conquerors, but we are not victims either. The chamber remained silent as she delivered her final words. The Dominion has been offered membership in this Concord, and they have accepted. They will work alongside the species they once terrorized, including humanity. This is not weakness or forgiveness, it is wisdom. We break our enemies so they cannot hurt us, and then we turn them into friends so they will not want to. That is how lasting peace is built. She stepped back from the podium. We hope this is the last time we are forced to demonstrate what humanity is capable of. We hope the galaxy has learned that attacking our homes is not a path to glory but to ruin. But if that lesson needs teaching again, she smiled, and there was warmth in it now, mixed with something harder underneath. We will be ready. We always are. 10 years passed, and the galaxy knew peace, unlike anything in its recorded history. Species that had fought for millennia now traded and cooperated. The Virex, guided by human advisors, became advocates for diplomatic solutions. Even the Krethvi, once the most warlike of all Concord members, began sending their children to human universities, and somewhere in the archives of the Galactic Concord, a warning was inscribed for any future species that might consider aggression against Earth. It was written in 1,000 languages, placed in databases that would survive for eons. A message for any civilization foolish enough to forget the lessons of history. They are kind. They are patient. They are generous and forgiving and slow to anger. Do not mistake this for weakness. They remember the 200,000 who died on New Eden. They remember the children who never grew up, the families that were torn apart, the colony that burned beneath an alien sky. They remember, and they always will. Humanity does not start wars, but they finish them, and in a garden on Earth, where butterflies danced among flowers transplanted from a dozen worlds. A monument stood in honor of a 7-year-old girl who had liked to chase them. Her name was carved in stone alongside 200,000 others, a reminder of the price that peace sometimes demands. Her father's final words were inscribed beneath. Remember what they did. Remember why we fought. And remember that mercy is not weakness, but strength, the strength to end a war without losing ourselves in the process. The galaxy read those words. And the galaxy understood humanity wanted peace. They always had, and now at last they had earned it. The Virex Dominion had ruled their empire for 10,000 years, and in all that time, no enemy had ever crossed their borders. They were the conquerors, the hunters, the masters of 100 star systems, and now they were the prey. Admiral Okonkwo, stood on the bridge of the Remembrance as his fleet jumped into Dominion space for the first time. The stars here were older, redder, and filled with the wreckage of civilizations the Virex had consumed. This was enemy territory, and every species in the galaxy expected humanity to stop at the border. Humanity had other plans. First wave of targets confirmed, his tactical officer reported. 3 shipyards, 2 military academies, and a weapons manufacturing complex. All within strike range. Engage all targets simultaneously. Okonkwo ordered. Leave nothing standing. The Terran fleet split into precise formations and began its work. Within hours, facilities that had taken centuries to build were reduced to burning debris. Virex defenders scrambled to respond, but they had never faced an enemy like this one that did not pause to celebrate victories or consolidate gains, but simply kept pushing forward like a force of nature. High Conquest Admiral Zyrith watched the reports flood into his command center with growing horror. This was the same human species his scouts had dismissed as farmers, the same species that had been mocked throughout the Concord for their peaceful ways. How is this possible? He demanded. Our intelligence showed them as weak. They hid their strength, Admiral, his aide replied, her voice trembling. For over a century, they built in secret while pretending to be harmless. We attacked what we thought was a defenseless colony, and instead, we woke a sleeping predator. Zyrith slammed his fist against the console, cracking the screen. Then we will destroy them with overwhelming force. Summon every fleet in the Dominion. I want 1,000 ships in their path within the week, but the humans did not wait. They did not pause to rest or regroup. Ship after ship emerged from jump points throughout Dominion space, each fleet more deadly than the last. Battles that the Virex expected to last days were over in hours. And the humans showed no interest in taking prisoners or accepting surrenders 1 month after the invasion began. The Dominion had lost half its military strength across the galaxy in the chambers of the Concord. Representatives of 47 species watched the war unfold with a mixture of awe and terror. None of them had ever seen anything like this, a species that fought with such cold, systematic efficiency that it seemed almost mechanical. They are not warriors, Krathvalum said quietly. They are something else entirely. They fight without passion, without honor, without glory. They simply destroy whatever stands in their way and move on. Ambassador Vasquez sat beside him. Having been invited to observe the proceedings rather than participate, you mistake our focus for coldness, she replied. We feel everything, the rage, the grief, the terrible weight of what we are doing. But we have learned to set those feelings aside until the work is done. We will mourn when it is over. Until then, we have a job to finish. And what happens when you reach their homeworld? Krathvalum asked, will you destroy them completely? Will you commit genocide against an entire species? Elena shook her head slowly. We are not monsters, Ambassador, despite what we are capable of. When this is over, the Virex will still exist. Their children will still play. Their artists will still create. Their farmers will still tend their fields. But their ability to wage war, their ships, their weapons, their military academies, those will be gone. We do not seek to destroy a people, only to remove a threat. And if they rebuild, then we will return, as many times as necessary, until they understand that war with humanity is not a path to glory, it is a path to ruin. In the depths of Dominion space, Admiral Zyrith made his final stand at the fortress world of Kirith. This was the Dominion's greatest military stronghold, defended by orbital platforms, ground batteries, and a fleet of 500 of their most powerful warships. Surely the humans would break against such defenses. The Terran fleet arrived with 800 vessels, including ships that had been reported destroyed weeks earlier. The Virex had watched those ships die, had celebrated their destruction, and now they watched them return, rebuilt, and rearmed, as if death meant nothing to humans. How? Xyrith whispered as the sensors showed him the impossible. We killed those ships. We destroyed them. They have mobile shipyards, his aide reported, her voice hollow with despair. They rebuild their losses faster than we can destroy them. Their ships are designed to be repaired and return to battle within days. The battle for Kirith lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the fortress was silent, its defenses shattered, its fleet scattered across space as debris. Xyrith himself was captured when his flagship was boarded by human marines who moved with a synchronization that seemed almost telepathic. They brought him before Admiral Okonkwo on the Bridge of the Remembrance. And for the first time, the High Conquest Admiral looked into the eyes of the enemy he had so badly underestimated. You will pay for this, Xyrith hissed. The Dominion has conquered 1,000 worlds. We have destroyed civilizations far greater than yours. Okonkwo regarded him with an expression that held no anger, no satisfaction, nothing but cold purpose. You killed our children, he replied simply. You burned our homes. You showed us no mercy when you had power over us. Now we have power over you, and you expect mercy. The laws of war. Do not speak to me of laws, Okonkwo interrupted, his voice hardening. Your species has never followed laws. You have only followed strength. So let me be clear about what happens next. We are coming for your homeworld. We are coming for every shipyard, every weapons factory, every military installation in your empire. And we will not stop until there is nothing left of your war machine but memory. He leaned close to the captured admiral. You wanted to see what humans are capable of. Now you will. Xyrith was sent to a prison facility far behind the lines, where he would watch the systematic destruction of everything his species had built over 10,000 years. The Dominion offered surrender twice, and twice Admiral Okonkwo refused his message to the Dominion. Leadership was broadcast across their entire territory. You showed New Eden no mercy. You killed 200,000 innocents without pause or regret. You did not offer them surrender. You did not spare their children. You simply murdered them and laughed. Now you ask for mercy? Now you want negotiations? No. You will receive exactly what you gave us nothing. We are coming for your homeworld. Pray to whatever gods you believe in, because humanity has none left for you. The Dominion fleet made its final stand at the edge of their home system, throwing everything they had at the advancing humans. Biological weapons, asteroid bombardments, suicide attacks. Nothing worked. The humans adapted to each new tactic with terrifying speed. And their advance never slowed. And then, at last, the Terran fleet arrived at Vyrix Prime. Billions of Vyrix looked to the sky and saw the ships that had crossed half the galaxy to reach them. They saw the weapons that had broken their empire. They saw the consequences of attacking a species that had never wanted war but had never forgotten how to wage it. They looked up, and they understood at last what they had awakened. The Galactic Concord had never known silence like the one that fell when the human fleet revealed itself. 47 species watched their sensors in disbelief as ship after ship emerged from hidden docks scattered across human space. And the numbers kept climbing until they stopped making sense. 8,000 combat vessels, Ambassador Krathvalum whispered, his translator struggling to convey the shock in his voice. This is not possible. Our intelligence showed them at 300. Ambassador Vasquez stood at the center of the council chamber, her gray uniform unchanged, her expression calm as ever. She had requested permission to address the Concord, and now every eye in the hall was fixed upon her. For 120 years, she began, humanity has been mocked in these chambers. We have been called cowards, weaklings, farmers who lack the courage to fight. You assumed that because we did not flaunt our strength, we had none. You assumed that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war. She let the words hang in the air as the alien ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "You were wrong." The holographic display behind her activated, showing tactical data that made military experts across the Concorde gasp. Human ships were not the simple vessels their public design suggested. They were over-engineered nightmares, packed with redundant systems and backup weapons and armor that should not have been possible. "Our ships are designed to keep fighting after they should be destroyed," Elena explained. "Our soldiers are equipped with neural link technology that allows entire squads to think as one. Our weapons are not designed to wound or disable. They are designed to end threats permanently." Krathvalum rose from his seat, his forearms trembling with something that might have been fear or rage. "Why?" he demanded. "Why hide this? Why pretend to be weak while building such a force?" Elena met his gaze without flinching. "Because we hoped we would never need to use it. Because every ship we built, every weapon we designed, represented a failure of diplomacy we prayed would never come. We did not want to be warriors, Ambassador. We wanted to be farmers and artists and merchants. But we are not foolish enough to believe that the galaxy would let us." She turned to address the full council. 120 years ago, when humanity first reached the stars, we made a decision. We would not seek conflict, but we would prepare for it. Every generation since has added to our reserves, improved our technology, trained our soldiers, not for glory or conquest, but because we remembered our own history. The display shifted to show images from human past, trenches filled with bodies, mushroom clouds rising over cities, refugees fleeing across broken lands. "We are not strangers to war," Elena continued. "We nearly destroyed ourselves with it before we ever left our world. We learned what happens when violence is answered with violence without end. We learned the price of wars that drag on for generations. And so we developed a different philosophy, what we call the doctrine of finality." The chamber fell silent as she explained. "Humanity does not fight wars of attrition. We do not seek to weaken our enemies or force them to the negotiating table. When we are forced into conflict, we enter it with one goal: to end the threat so completely that it can never rise again. Not through genocide, but through the absolute destruction of our enemy's ability and will to wage war." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The Vyrix Dominion murdered 200,000 of our people. They killed our children and burned our cities without warning or provocation. They have made themselves a threat that we cannot ignore. And so we will not simply defeat them. We will break them so thoroughly that no species in this galaxy will ever again consider attacking humanity." Krathvalum found his voice at last. "You speak of making war against an empire that has conquered 1,000 worlds. You speak as if victory is certain." Elena smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "You still do not understand. This is not about victory, it is about ending. The Dominion chose to make itself our enemy. Now they will learn what that means." Far from the Concorde, in the space above New Eden's ruins, the first Terran fleet arrived. Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Remembrance and surveyed the debris field that had once been a thriving colony. "Sensor sweep complete," his tactical officer reported. "No survivors detected on the surface. Vyrix occupation forces number approximately 50,000 troops with heavy armor support." Okonkwo nodded slowly, his dark eyes reflecting the fires that still burned on the planet below. "Signal the fleet. Begin orbital bombardment of military targets only. I want those occupation forces eliminated within the hour." "Sir," his communications officer interrupted. "We are receiving a transmission from the Vyrix commander. He demands that we surrender or face destruction." A cold smile crossed Okonkwo's face. "Open the channel." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a Vyrix officer whose armor was decorated with the symbols of high rank. Behind him, officers scurried about in what appeared to be growing panic. "Human commander," the Vyrix began, "you are outnumbered and outmatched. The Dominion fleet that destroyed this world was merely an advance force. Reinforcements are already en route. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Okonkwo said nothing for a long moment, simply staring at the alien with an expression of absolute calm. "I am Admiral James Okonkwo of the United Terran Navy," he replied finally. "And I am going to explain something to you that your species clearly failed to learn before attacking our colony." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a tone that made his own officers shiver. "You have killed our children. You have burned our homes. You have shown us that you are a threat that will never stop, never negotiate in good faith, never allow us to live in peace. And so we are not here to defeat you, we are here to erase you." The Virix commander laughed, though his translator could not quite hide the uncertainty beneath it. "Bold words from a fleet facing a Dominion armada. Your reinforcements," Okonkwo continued as if the alien had not spoken, "jumped into the system 12 minutes ago. They were engaged by our second fleet and destroyed. There were no survivors. You are not facing an armada, Commander. You are facing a species that has decided you need to stop existing as a military power." The Virix officer's face went pale beneath his scales. That fleet had 200 ships, and now it has none. "Neither do you." Okonkwo cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Begin the bombardment. When you are finished, move to the next system. We stop when there is nothing left to stop." The guns of the Remembrance spoke, and the war that would reshape the galaxy had truly begun across the Concord. Species that had mocked humanity for generations watched the battle footage in horrified silence. The humans did not fight like other races. They did not seek glory or honor or territory. They fought like surgeons removing a cancer, precise and thorough and utterly without mercy. For the first time in galactic history, someone had woken the humans from their peaceful slumber, and the humans were angry. The sky above New Eden turned red at exactly 14 minutes past noon, and Governor Marcus Chen knew immediately that everything had changed. The color was wrong, too bright, too angry, and the emergency sirens that followed confirmed what his heart already understood. Unidentified fleet entering orbit. His aide screamed, her voice breaking as she read the data flooding across her screen. 47 ships, no, more than that. They are still coming through the jump point. Marcus grabbed the emergency communicator and opened a channel to the orbital defense station, but only static answered him. The station was already gone, vaporized by weapons that moved faster than human sensors could track. "Get my daughter," he said quietly, the calm in his voice hiding the terror that clawed at his chest. "Get everyone to the shelters," but there was no time. The first bombardment began before the evacuation orders could even be sent. The Virix did not announce themselves. They did not demand surrender. They simply began killing. Their weapons turned the sky into fire and the ground into glass. And the people of New Eden died by the thousands with each passing minute Marcus watched from his window as the city he had built burned around him. Schools collapsed into rubble, hospitals became craters, and the bodies of children lay in streets that had known nothing but peace for 2 generations. He searched for his daughter in the chaos, screaming her name until his voice gave out. He found her in what remained of the garden, her small body broken beneath a fallen wall. The birds that had sung so sweetly that morning were silent now, and Marcus held his child and wept as the world ended around him. The bombardment lasted for 4 hours. When it finally stopped, 200,000 humans were dead, and the colony of New Eden existed only as ash and memory. But Marcus Chun was still alive, and he had one final duty to perform. He crawled through the ruins to the emergency broadcast station, his legs broken, his blood leaving a trail across the scorched earth. The building was half collapsed, but the equipment still functioned, and Marcus used the last of his strength to activate the transmission array. "This is Governor Marcus Chen of New Eden," he said into the camera, his face covered in blood and dust, calling Earth and all human colonies. "We have been attacked without warning by an unknown hostile force. Our colony is destroyed. Our people are dead. My daughter," his voice broke, and tears cut tracks through the ash on his cheeks. "My daughter was 7 years old. She liked to chase butterflies in the garden. She never hurt anyone. They killed her anyway. They killed everyone." He coughed blood and forced himself to continue. "I do not know if anyone will hear this message. I do not know if I will survive long enough to finish it. But I need you to understand something. These creatures showed us no mercy. They did not ask for surrender. They simply began slaughtering innocents. This was not an act of war. This was an act of murder on a planetary scale." Behind him, through the shattered window, a Vyrix dropship descended from the smoke-filled sky. Soldiers in black armor began spreading through the ruins, executing any survivors they found. "I can hear them coming," Marcus said. "So let me say this while I still can. Remember New Eden. Remember what they did to us. Remember my daughter and the 200,000 souls who died beside her. And when the time comes," the door behind him exploded inward, and Vyrix soldiers filled the room with weapons raised. Marcus Chen looked directly into the camera, smiled the smile of a man who had already accepted his death, and spoke his final words: "Make them understand what happens when you hurt our children." The transmission cut to static as pulse fire tore through his body, but the message had already been sent. It raced across the stars at the speed of light, carrying the images of burning cities and broken bodies to every human world in existence on Earth. The broadcast interrupted every channel simultaneously. Billions of humans watched in silence as their colony burned, as their people died. As Governor Chen held his murdered daughter and wept, there was no panic. There was no screaming. There was only a terrible, absolute stillness that settled across the human species like a shroud. President Yuki Tanaka stood in the command center beneath Tokyo, surrounded by generals and admirals who waited for her orders. The footage from New Eden played on every screen, and the silence in the room was so complete that the humming of computers sounded like thunder. "Madam President," General Morrison said carefully, "the Galactic Concord is calling an emergency session. Ambassador Vasquez reports that several species are urging us to negotiate, to offer tribute to the attacking force. They believe. I know what they believe," Tanaka interrupted, her voice flat and cold. "They believe we are weak. They believe we will surrender. They believe that because we have never started a war, we do not know how to finish one." She turned to face her commanders, and the look in her eyes made hardened warriors step backward. "What is the status of the contingency fleets?" Admiral Okonkwo stepped forward, his dark face grim but ready. "All 12 fleets are operational and awaiting orders. The deep stations have confirmed readiness. Total combat strength is approximately 8,000 warships, plus support vessels." Morrison blinked in shock. The public records showed the Terran Navy at barely 300 ships. 8,000? He repeated, "We've been preparing for this day since we first reached the stars." Tanaka explained, "Not because we wanted war, but because we knew that peace would one day fail us. Every generation since the founding has built and hidden and waited, hoping the fleet would never be needed." She looked at the image of Marcus Chen frozen on the screen, his face bloody, his eyes filled with grief and defiance. That hope died with New Eden. She pressed a button on the console before her, and her image appeared on every screen across human space. "From Earth to Mars to the most distant colony, citizens of humanity," she said, "you have seen what was done to our brothers and sisters on New Eden. You have seen our children murdered, our cities burned, our people slaughtered without warning or mercy. The creatures who did this call themselves the Vyrix Dominion, and they believe that we will bow to them as others have. They believe that our love of peace makes us incapable of war. Her expression hardened into something ancient and terrible, an echo of every human who had ever faced extinction and refused to accept it. They have made their choice. Now we make ours. Across Earth and Mars and Titan, massive doors that had been sealed for a century began to open. Mountains split apart to reveal shipyards the size of cities. Oceans parted as submarines carrying weapons of unimaginable power rose to the surface. The galaxy had believed that humanity had no military tradition, no warrior culture, no taste for blood. They were about to learn how wrong they were. To the Vyrix Dominion, President Tanaka continued, her voice carrying to every corner of human space. I have only this to say. You have attacked our home. You have murdered our people. You have killed our children. For this, there will be no negotiation, no tribute, no surrender. There will only be consequences. She paused, and when she spoke again, her words became a promise that would echo through history. Humanity does not start wars. But God help anyone who makes us finish one. The screens went dark, and across the stars, the engines of 8,000 warships roared to life. The great hall of the Galactic Concord stretched for nearly a mile, its crystal walls reflecting the light of 3 artificial suns that hung suspended in the ceiling above. It was here that 47 species gathered to discuss the fate of the Orion Arm. And it was here that Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in silence while aliens twice her size laughed at her people. She had grown used to the mockery over her 15 years of service. The whispers that followed her through corridors. The snickers that erupted whenever Earth's name was mentioned in council sessions. The casual dismissal that came with being human in a galaxy that respected only strength. The humans wished to speak on the matter of trade routes, announced the Concord's automated herald. Its voice echoing through the vast chamber. Ellen rose from her seat, her simple gray uniform standing in stark contrast to the elaborate armor and ceremonial robes worn by the other ambassadors. She walked to the central platform with measured steps, aware that 1,000 alien eyes watched her with something between amusement and pity. Distinguished members of the Concord, she began, her voice calm and steady. Earth proposes an expansion of the agricultural exchange program to include more farming. Interrupted Krathvalum, the massive ambassador from the Krethvi Empire. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of theatrical disbelief, and his mandibles clicked with laughter that his translator rendered as sharp barking sounds. The humans wish to discuss farming while empires rise and fall across the galaxy. Laughter rippled through the chamber, and Elena waited for it to subside. She had learned long ago that interrupting only made things worse. The Krethvi find it amusing, Krathvalum continued, rising to his full 8 feet of armored height, that the species which claims to have tamed a death world now concerns itself with the growing of vegetables. Where are your warriors, Ambassador Vasquez? Where are the fearsome humans we were promised when your kind first reached the stars? Elena met his gaze without flinching. Her brown eyes held no anger, no fear, only a patience that the Krethvi had never learned to read. Our warriors are at home, she replied simply, because they are not needed here. We came to the Concord seeking partnership, not conquest. Partnership. Krathvalum spat the word like it was poison. You came because you are weak. In 120 years of membership, humanity has never once drawn a weapon in anger. Your fleet is barely large enough to patrol your own borders. You have no warrior caste, no military academies, no culture of honor. You are farmers and artists and merchants, and nothing more. The hall murmured in agreement. Even species that had no love for the Krethvi nodded at the warrior's words. Elena allowed herself a small smile, one that Krathvalum mistook for embarrassment. You are correct that we have never started a conflict, she said, and I hope we never will. Humanity does not seek war. We lack the taste for it. But I would caution against confusing our restraint for weakness. Restraint. Krathvalum laughed again, louder this time. Is that what you call it when a species hides behind treaties instead of facing their enemies? Is that what you call it when your ships run from pirates rather than fight? The truth is simple. Ambassador, your kind is soft. You were broken by your own world before you ever reached the stars, and now you lack the courage to face the darkness between them. Elena gathered her notes and prepared to return to her seat. There was no point in arguing further. Perhaps you were right, she said quietly, though her voice carried through the silent hall. Or perhaps you will one day learn that there is a difference between a species that cannot fight and a species that chooses not to. I hope for all our sakes that lesson never needs teaching. She returned to her seat as the council moved on to other business, and Krathvalum basked in the approval of his fellow warriors. Another human had been put in their place. Another reminder that Earth was nothing but a mere power in a galaxy, ruled by strength. But Elena's words would echo in the halls of the Concord for centuries to come. Though none who heard them that day understood why, far from the political theater of the Concord, on the other side of human space, the colony of New Eden orbited a gentle yellow sun. It was humanity's garden in the stars. A world of rolling plains and vast forests where 3 million people had built lives of peace and plenty. Governor Marcus Chun stood on the balcony of his residence and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. His daughter played in the garden below, her laughter mixing with the songs of birds that humanity had brought from Earth. Another shipment of grain left for HFY territory today, his aide reported. Scrolling through her tablet, they sent their usual message of thanks. Quote, "The Concord acknowledges the agricultural contribution of the human colony." Unquote. Marcus smiled. The HFY would starve without human food, yet they still could not bring themselves to show genuine gratitude. And the new school? He asked, opens next month. We have children from 6 different species enrolled. The Volani ambassador specifically requested that her grandchildren attend. This was humanity's way, not conquest, not domination, but connection. They built schools instead of fortresses, farms instead of weapons factories, bridges instead of walls. Some called it weakness. Marcus called it wisdom. He had no way of knowing that his world had less than 3 days left to exist in the depths of space, far beyond the borders of the Galactic Concord. Something ancient and hungry had finally noticed the Orion Arm. The Vyrix Dominion had conquered 1,000 worlds across 10,000 years, and they had never once been stopped. Their ships were mountains of black metal and pulsing red light, built not for elegance, but for terror. Their soldiers were born in vats and raised for war. Their culture had only one word that mattered: Dominion-High Conquest. Admiral Zyrith stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the map of human space. The intelligence reports made him laugh, a sound like grinding stone. These creatures have no war fleet, he said to his officers. No planetary defenses worthy of the name, no warrior tradition. Their worlds are fat and unprotected, their people soft and trusting. This will not be a war. It will be a harvest. His officers struck their chests in salute, eager for the slaughter to come. Begin with the agricultural world, Zyrith commanded. Kill enough to send a message. The rest will surrender before we fire another shot. The Dominion fleet altered course toward New Eden, and the galaxy held its breath without knowing why on Earth. In a bunker buried miles beneath the Swiss Alps, a sensor station detected the incoming fleet and began transmitting alerts. But the warnings would arrive too late to save New Eden. They would only arrive in time to wake something that the galaxy had never seen, something that humanity had spent 120 years hoping would never be needed. The humans had told the truth. They did not seek war. They did not start conflicts. They were farmers and artists and merchants, but they had never forgotten how to finish them.